Welcome to the recovery scene. I'm your host, Leslie. Make sure that you like and subscribe and feel free to share as well, of course. Today we have Sal Giglio. He is obviously he is here. He's going to share his addiction to recovery story. Sal says it kind of got bad for him around 24 when his father passed. But as always, I'm going to give Sal the floor, and I'm going to let him tell you his story. Sal, thanks so much for being here. I'm really excited. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm always humbled to share my story, and hopefully, someone may hear something that may help them. Even if it's just one person, that's enough for me. Um, my name is Sal Giglio. I'm an alcoholic, and I've been sober since September 25th of 2013. And I just haven't found it necessary to pick up any mood or mind changing substances since that day or the day before. And I'm very thankful my life has changed today compared to what it used to be. I grew up in a pretty privileged home. My parents migrated over here from Sicily. That they knew that there was opportunity. My grandfather came first. My father soon came after, and then my mom came after he came, just to make sure everything was good. And I have four older sisters. They're from Brooklyn. Everyone's from Brooklyn, and I'm the lone wolf from Maryland. What ended up happening, my dad got into the pizza business after doing your traditional taxi driving, shoe shining jobs. What was available back in the day, and so being the last kid, being the fifth child, my parents were in their late 30s when they had me. So I'm not sure if I was planned but I was like the prince of peace, if you will, for them. um, I was a spoiled little kid, and my dad just literally just showed me off to the world. And we had a pizza business in Maryland for 31 years. And so anything and everything that I ever wanted, I ever needed was available. And, I never knew how well I actually had it until I became an adult. And so being privileged, I always had like that complex of people wanting to, kind of hang out with me and stuff like that. But I never like ever felt comfortable with myself. At a very young age, fear entered my life very quickly. My dad was mugged out front of my house when I was about 4 years old. And I just remember like my grandma bringing him inside with like just this bloody mess. And that was my first like real altercation with fear.
Yeah,
And
that had to
so
be terrifying for a
it
4 year
was,
old to see.
I still remember it.
I mean, to you, your dad is huge. And for
Yes.
someone to be able to do that to him, that's a real blow.
And so I see this man bleeding all over the place, and obviously he recovered from that. And what ended up transpiring is that I was just a scared little kid. I was scared of going to sleep. I was in fear that those people would come back and just off my entire family. So I would sleep staring at the doorknob. I would always keep like some sort of light on in the room. Sometimes I would sleep with the entire light on, just like the whole ceiling fan, just because I felt more comfortable knowing that light felt like safe, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that fear was instilled in me at a very young age, and I just never felt comfortable as a kid. I never felt like I was good enough at a very, very young age. I didn't like who I was in my own skin. I just wanted to be the people that were either next to me, behind me, or in front of me. Never wanted to be who I was given to be, myself.
That is definitely
And
a recurring theme in a lot of interviews. Absolutely.
yes, And also with trauma, I notice a lot of addicts have some level of trauma in
Absolutely.
their early childhood. And I'm not going to directly, blame that, but, I definitely think that there is a possibility that it has a big, it plays a big factor. And so, going to school, my dad, like the family would bring pizza and stuff like that. So I was like, I always felt like that weird kid. Like, why do I like? Can we just have like McDonald's or something? And and so I always felt weird because I felt almost like embarrassed. You know what I mean? And going into middle school and high school is when like I first experimented with your traditional gateway marijuana. And so I love to smoke, and it was okay to, and that was a big deal in my house, like no drugs. Alcohol, no problem. Like my dad, I'm not here to deem him alcoholic, but he worked his butt off all day. And then at nighttime, when it was time to wind down and close the restaurant while people were sweeping and mopping the floors, there was always a Budweiser and a whiskey.
Mhm.
And so I just got accustomed to that, and I got accustomed to hanging out at the restaurant in my young, early teenage years and having my first sips of beer and whiskey with him. And that was completely fine. Like there was no issues with that because in the old country, like you can literally, because I know this for a fact because I've been there, you can go order a drink and be a 15-year-old kid. It doesn't matter,
Yep. Yep.
so
Scotland. My whole
it
family's in Scotland. I had to be able to
exactly.
see over
So
the bar. Mm-hmm.
it didn't really matter. There was no 21-year-old age limit. Like everything was unlimited. And so of course we had the restaurant and everything was accessible. There was beer, there was wine, and then of course we would go get liquor right next door. And so that's my early first indications with alcohol was with him. And then the marijuana. And so that was kind of my thing for a while, marijuana and alcohol. Well, I kind of, paved my way through high school. I actually went to a public high school right here in my town, and then I ended up switching and manipulating myself into going into a smaller school so I could pass much easier. I'm a guy who's always looking for a shortcut through life. So if there's like a way I could shortcut something and just get to the end, that's me in a nutshell. I never want to do things the correct right way, So if like I can give you a million analogies, but at the end of the day, shortcuts, that's me all day. And so I went from a 50-person classroom to a 5 to 10 person classroom. I went from homework to no homework. I went from a below 1.0 average to over 3.0 average. I knew how to manipulate things at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of mental health issues in my family, a lot of depression, a lot of suicide attempts, alcoholism, addiction. There's a lot that goes along with that. And so in my teenage years, drinking with dad, like my mom's side of the family has I had a couple gay uncles, gay cousins, and my dad like automatically associated with me being gay, and I was like 13 or 14 years old. I had just like learned about this stuff in freaking home ec and health class. Like I was just starting to gain interest in women, but like he just automatically deemed me this because my mom's side of the family. So what I'm getting at is he would throw beer bottles, he would punch, and he would automatically just blame me for things that just weren't true. And so I remember vividly like the delivery drivers would just they would bring me home and sorry about that.
It's
They
okay.
would bring they would bring me home and and make sure that I was safe because my dad would come home. He would come home screaming at me, screaming at my mom, and just calling me all kinds of names, calling her all kinds of names. This poor woman's just sleeping in her bed, asleep. And so that trauma continued throughout my teenage years with him. And I
Now,
began
this
to,
from his
Mhm.
drinking, or
Yes.
okay,
So when he drank, he was a real Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. You know, you never knew what you were going to get. You were going to get a lot of happiness, and then um, you're going to get fear, you're going to get depression, and then you're going to get anger. There was just different levels with his drinking, and the more we drank, like you would just see those different levels come. And I learned to kind of absorb those different levels of depression, anxiety, fear, anger. I absorbed that stuff, and that ended up kind of being my story later on down the road. And so I graduated high school, and I got the I'm getting so many notifications. My phone doesn't ring all day, and then all of a sudden
of course.
I get on a YouTube, and things happen. Um, I get the idea. My sister's in Florida, I have cousins in Florida. I'm like, let's go to Florida. Like, let's get out of Maryland. And so I moved down to Florida. I put my car on the train. I'm smoking weed on the train. I'm excited to get down there and try new weed. And just be like a teenager. I went to computer science, and I say I mastered in bongology because we just we just smoked so much bud, and that was just kind of my thing. And I ended up getting arrested. I sold marijuana to an undercover police officer.
Oh wow.
And yeah, and right outside of Tampa. And what ended up happening was I ended up getting arrested, and they thought that they had hit the kingpin from Maryland, and I just had a little bit of weed, and it wasn't anything like that. I would only sell to like the people in the complex. And I ended up going to jail for a few hours. And my dad, like I said, he hated drugs, and I had to call him, and I was scared. And daddy's money got me out of everything, and it got me into everything too.
Hmm.
Got me out of it, got me out of trouble, and it got me into selling drugs because there was available funds, and I could buy that stuff. And so I'm in jail, I'm scared, and I call dad. I'm like, look, this is what happened. I get out of jail like immediately. I don't know what he did or what happened, but I got out, and that was another level of fear, because now I'm in the system, and I'm not home. I'm in Florida. Yes, I moved there, but that's not home. And so now I got to go do drug tests, and I gotta pee in front of this man, and I can't pee. Like, I just could never do it. Like, I just never felt comfortable peeing in front of someone. Like, it's like that stage fright. It's just horrible. But the way it was down there is that you would call ahead of time to get your color to know if you're gonna do a urinalysis the next day. And if my color wasn't up, like, I knew what I was able to do. I knew that I was able to just go get as much alcohol as possible. I knew that I couldn't smoke marijuana because that stays in your system for up to 30 days. But I used to buy those like drinks that like would make your urine turn like lime green. I would just manipulate, and I would take those chances. And thank God, like, I never got caught, because there was a couple occasions where I did end up smoking marijuana on probation, and I didn't get caught. Um, so what ended up happening was I moved into a trap house, with my cousin. My cousin was, involved with all kinds of things down there. He was a carpenter, and he was involved with, um, he loved to do cocaine and freebase. And so um, he would do those things, and we ended up moving in together. And all of a sudden, these people would just come in the house, and they'd be there for days. And I'm like, I was naive, like, I'd never been around this stuff before, and I was like, what is happening? Like, I didn't understand what was happening. And they were just searching the floor for rocks, for days, and I I I didn't like I told myself, never gonna do cocaine, never gonna do cocaine. And then I ended up getting my probation transferred to back to Maryland. So I was in Florida for about a year, and I ended up, um, you know, finding a girl and falling in love. And what do you know? She likes to party, So we end up moving in together, and she's into the coke, and I was like, all right, since you like it. So I was motivated to do it with her, and I ended up getting like falling in love. And so that was my story for the next, you know, couple years, was just like a lot of drinking and a lot of coke. And eventually she broke my heart, and that's when like drinking really excelled. And then the restaurant ended up closing in 2005. My grandmother passed away 2 months after the restaurant closed. She fell in Florida visiting her daughter, broke her hip, got an infection, and ended up dying. That woman would probably still be alive today. She was like,
Oh, yeah.
she was an ox. I'll tell you, she was something else. And so that girl broke my heart. So I had my first like real heartbreak, and I'm like, just drinking and partying. And I would now just go to the bars, like I was the bar guy, get there at a certain time and leave. And most people would leave and go home, and not me. Like I would go wherever the continuation was, and wherever I could do as much partying as I can for multiple days in a row. And so that happened for a few years, and then I ended up finding another girl. And then she was a college graduate, liked to drink, no drugs, and I was like, sweet, like we can just get back to just drinking. But I'm an addict. I didn't know it at the time, but like I'm sneaking this stuff behind her back, and she ended up leaving because we weren't going to get anywhere with the relationship. It just became stagnant, and so what ended up happening was, when I was with her though, my dad came down with cancer. And this cancer was a mesothelioma, the one you see on television,
Yes.
that's constantly advertised. Well, that's what he died from. Horrible. And they gave him 18 months to live. He lived for 8. He just drank himself down, and just smoked his Marlboro Reds and drank, and it took him out in 8 months, and that girl was there for me during those times. And but after a few months of him being passed and what was all said and done, like it was time for her to move on. She found a young stud that was, right up her alley. And I still was trying to figure myself out. I had landed a good job. So I was with a pretty prestigious company that was on the up and up, and I got in at the right time. And so I was making pretty good money, and things were going well. And I get a Facebook message from this lovely woman, and she asked me, "Hey, what do you think about me going out with this guy? Like, do you know him?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course. Like, I love him." Like, so I was like, "Why don't you go out with me?" and so
I
we
forget
met
that
up at
guy.
a
I got a
bar.
better option for you.
and and that guy ended up, he's a brother of mine. That guy ended up losing his battle with addiction, and I miss him every day. And she and I got together, and we're 11 plus years in now, and I'll get into that. So we're together. We like to drink. We're out doing stuff, and I proposed to her a year and a half into it. We're having a great time. I love her children, and we go out one night and to a sports bar. And in this sports bar, like over here in Maryland, there's a town called Ocean City. There's a boardwalk, and there's a lot of games. And one of those games is like a punching bag game, where you can punch the bag and you accumulate points for how macho you are.
Oh, yeah.
And so they had one of these in a bar, and I was like, it was a Thursday night. It was like tequila night for Sal. And so I punched this thing. All the boys are there. She's there. I'm like feeling mighty and macho. And I knew something happened with my hand. And like any good alcoholic, what I ended up doing was some more tequila shots, and I ended up hitting it again. And what ended up transpiring was I said, Lauren, we need to go home. Like, I hurt my hand. Didn't swell, nothing like that. The next morning, I went to the urgent care, and I had a boxer's fracture, and they prescribed me with Percocet 15 milligram oxycodones. And so I ended up instantly, I mean, I want to say within a matter of maybe 3 to 4 days, becoming fully in love with those pills.
Yeah.
And so I had surgery. Was that in 2011? Yeah, in 2011, I had surgery. And so I had a brace on, and I had this doctor that I was able to just manipulate. Like, we went from 15 to 30 milligram to the next level of narcotic pain medication, which back then was Opana. And, you know, and then I said the Opanas weren't working, so I went back to the 30 milligram. It was just a freaking shit show. And I would be at the doctor's office literally at 8 o'clock in the morning, waiting for them to open. And I would make up stories about how my script got lost, filed, you know, false police report about, you know, my pills being stolen.
Right, because this is before they had the database, wasn't it?
Yeah. So
yeah.
I wasn't like shopping.
Out, but
I wasn't shopping docs at the time, but I was able, just this one doctor, to just like, I was just able to get him to like express pity on me, and I would just give him like all the pity, and I'd be like, it's not working, you know. I have a scar right here, you know. I have a plate and 5 screws, but the type of medication that I was receiving was probably for someone that was dying of like stage 4 cancer, that's a terminal patient. And for the urgent care to provide me with that type of medication from the jump street tells me a little bit about how bad it was in those years. Because I know nowadays it's not as bad. I know that there's a lot of worse street drugs, but I know, like, I think things are a little bit more regulated as far as what they prescribe.
It
and
is
so
better. Yeah. Yes.
Good. And so I'm on this heavy medication, and I just immediately just become addicted, you know, so alcohol and drugs. We end up getting married, you know, and I don't remember but 20% of my wedding. And it's because I was just so engulfed in myself and became like this selfish dude. And, you know, we were married a little over a year. I ended up getting fired from the job because I was drinking on the job. And at this point, when I'm drinking on the job, I'm doing Suboxones, pills, Adderall, you name it. I was doing it. I was just like, do I want to stay on them? Do I want to get off of them? And I'm mixing all this stuff, and I'm freaking going crazy. And the job obviously took notice because I would drive people around in neighborhoods while they tried to schedule appointments. I'm driving college students around 10 and 20 at a time, and I'm going to the liquor store while they're out in the streets. And finally, they just said that there's something wrong with Sal. And so I had to, you know, I had to get fired, and I had to come home. But I didn't come home first. I went to mommy. I said, Mommy, I need pills. I need to tell Lauren what happened. So I come home and I tell her I got fired from the job. I poured myself a vodka and lemonade over there by the refrigerator. I still remember. And then she gave me, she packed up some stuff. She packed up the kids, and she said, look, like, it's me or this. And I was like, man, I don't want to be divorced. Like, all my sisters are divorced. I'm not going to be this statistic. I'm not going to die. Well, I am going to die if I continue doing these things, because I know what's coming. You know, I know the needles are coming next. And so I knew someone that was in AA, and I called him. I said, hey, bro, like, I'm dying. Like, I need help. What do I do? And he invited me to a meeting. You know, I went to that meeting, and I was feeling like crap. I didn't pick up that day, and that was the 25th, and I heard a message of hope that night. You know, I heard a man laughing at his own jokes, and a man that drank out of a paper bag, that lived underneath the bridge, like all that, that stigma that AA gets. But this guy actually like lived that life,
Wow.
and
That's
but he
actually
was.
rare. Like
It
people
is rare,
see
and it
movies
was
and they're like,
it was my first one. It was like, so this is true. Like people do live underneath the bridge. Like I knew it.
I
He
knew
didn't say he had a trench coat, but I knew it. I was like, yes. And so, but I heard a message of hope. I've heard a message of recovery, and I saw people around me that seemed happy, that seemed joyous, that seemed free. And I said to myself, Sal, this looks like somewhere you belong. And so what ended up transpiring was, um, I ended up going to a meeting the next day. And before I know it, I'm asking that man to be my sponsor. And I'm asking this man to walk me through the steps, because he told me an alcoholic is like wet cement. You can turn wet cement into anything, but once it dries up, you have to jackhammer that shit loose. And
that.
so he was like, we need to move you through these steps, you know. And the purpose behind the steps is to work them, live them, and share them, right, with
Right.
another individual. Um, we all come from all walks of life into recovery, and I'll get into that. But so I worked these steps, and what began to transpire was a day at a time, a day at a time, a day at a time. I'm finding it necessary that I don't need to pick up a drug or drink, and that life can actually be life, And so I'm trying to get back to this childlike mentality when I'm not, succumb to this alcohol and to this drugs. This wasn't the person that I always was. How do I get back to that childlike mentality? And so, I just know that at a day at a time for the last 7+ years, I've had a lot of ups and downs. My first year of recovery, my mother-in-law passed away 2 days before my 1 year anniversary, and that was a time when my wife and her family needed me to be me, and I showed up, and I suited up, and I did anything and everything I possibly could at that point to just be a good son-in-law, be a good husband, be a good stepfather, be a
Right.
good brother-in-law. And so, that woman, I mean, she meant the world to me. And I only got a few years with her as my mother-in-law, and it pisses me off because she was so awesome. And we all miss her dearly. And, she passed unexpectedly from a massive stroke. And so, in recovery, I mean, it's life on life's terms. There's ups, there's downs. There's a lot of things that have happened. I'm a stepfather to two awesome teenage, one teenage girl who's 18 and a teenage son. And 4.5 years ago, my wife and I, we had a little baby girl. And that little baby girl has a rare genetic disorder, 1 in 38 million.
Oh wow.
And so she's nonverbal, and she has microcephaly, and she has this and she has that, and all the things that the doctors will define, as she'll always be like this and that. And I look at the situation like this, like God took this man right here, and I was a piece of shit for a long time, and he turned me into a piece of heaven. And I know that he's merciful, and I know his love, and I know that how lucky we are to have such an awesome little happy, energetic, non-sleeping little girl that just
Amen.
enjoys life. Yeah, she does not sleep that much, but she reminds me how innocent life is, and to find the laughter and just the most simplest things. Like she'll pick something up and be like, this is fun, like I'm gonna laugh at it for 10 minutes because it's a great time. Just simple things in life,
Mhm.
and I'm very, very happy to be her sober daddy that she needs. And listen, I am not no perfect man. I have issues, I have issues with being reactive, I have issues with being selfish. I'm not saying that sobriety's turned me into this perfect person, but what I am saying is that I can go through life without having to pick up any drugs or alcohol, because don't to be honest with you, those weren't really the problems. The problem was is that I have a spiritual malady. I have a spiritual malady, and the only solution to that spiritual malady is a spiritual solution, in which I choose to call God. And so without him, left to my own devices, I'm just nothing, you know. I can go the drug and alcohol way because that once was a solution, or I can choose God and the path of recovery. And so at a day at a time, based on the spiritual maintenance and the daily reprieve, I choose to go right, you know, towards God's will. Sometimes I take my will. Sometimes it's all about Sal. And, you know, thank God I have an awesome wife that can keep me centered and remind me. And it sucks sometimes because she has to remind me, and that, you know, I'm not showing that growth, but, you know, um, I'm trying, and I'm a work. It's progress, not for perfection for me. And so I'm just blessed today, you know. And then I plateaued in recovery when the pandemic hit. I was hitting one meeting a week, and that was my home group on Zoom. And then I like came on TikTok, and I was like, okay, what's this all about? I had no idea how to use the app, because you actually have to give it like some effort. And, you know, when making a video, like, you know, I'm like transition, split, effects,
I still can't use half that crap.
timer. I'm like, what is going on? And I've been active heavily on TikTok probably since October, little like late October. I found a Zoom meeting, and then I found some awesome people, and then I found people like Ronnie Morales and and B Magic and Recovery Mike, and, you know, Brittany Jade and Chuck Northwest and these people.
I mean, it's a huge community. It's
Dizzy and April and
the
you
young
know,
people. You
yeah,
know, when I started a year ago,
awesome.
we were there, but there weren't a whole lot of us. And all these young people who are getting, you know, recovered in their early 20s and even late teens. And I think, God, that's awesome.
It is. And my home group in my town is a young group. You know, it's a young and like old. There's not really like that much in between. But this TikTok recovery, you know, you find all walks of life: NA, AA, CA, no A, like just like and you see people that are medically assisted treatment. You see people that are just like, I'm doing it on my own, or I'm doing it on my own with support. And I'm like, wow, you know, I'm just mind blown by all the different levels of recovery. Because look, you ain't got to work the 12 steps. If it's not for you, then it's not for you. That's what I needed. That's my experience.
Right.
Like, I had to have it, you know, but, you know, person B might not need that.
Right. You do what you need to do to stay sober, period.
Exactly.
Period. And
I know
alive.
that if I don't stay sober, then my life is going to hit the shitter pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I know I will spiral right back to where I was, if not worse than before. And so, you know, now I spend a lot of time on TikTok looking for the newcomer. I go live. I try to spread the message. I don't have a huge following, but that's okay. You know, it's not about the followers. I want the followers because I want to spread the message to like hundreds of thousands of people, because I feel like I have something to offer, you know. And so it means a lot to me to put myself out there, and I answer messages, and I take the time to actually respond to people and to comments, and because I can't keep what was so freely given. And so with that, I'm thankful to be here. I appreciate the invitation, and I thank you so much for letting me share tonight.
No, thank you. Thank you. You know, that's an awesome story. And I do think that, you know, I'm one of those people that I think service work, no matter what kind of recovery you're in, one thing across the board is service work and helping others and mentoring, because it gets us out of our own head. because when
I
we're in
love
our
it.
own head, you know, especially like in quarantine, that's when we get good ideas,
Uh-huh.
you know.
You got that right.
And so TikTok is such a great platform to be able to do that and really reach and connect with people, you know, including other people in recovery.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and if I have 500,000 followers and I save one person with my story, then I'm a success.
Period.
You know, yeah.
And funny you mentioned service because about a month and a half ago, I went with Recovery Mike and his lovely other half, and we went to Kensington and we gave away some care packages. I'd never been to Kensington, Pennsylvania before, and what I saw was I saw sadness, and that man spent 7 years of his life down here,
I
and
can't
and
even,
and he made it out. He made
I
it out.
know, I
He
can't
made
even
it out.
fathom,
I don't know if you've ever been there, if you've ever seen it,
but I've
but
heard. I have not
it's
been there.
scary. I mean, we're giving out care packages and watching where we walk so we don't step on a needle. And so when he invited me up there, I was like, you know, I was apprehensive because of COVID, but then I was like, you know what? Like, I can't live in fear. Like, I need to go do this.
Right.
And it just felt so rewarding to drive up for the day and to come back home. And if anything else fails, service work doesn't, you know, especially with another alcoholic or addict, and just trying to be of service and help people. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much again, Sal, and
Thank
thank
you.
your wife for letting us have you for a little bit.
Sure, sure. She understands. I always try to ask beforehand if it's okay if I, have some time to share.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, and we will
My pleasure.
definitely keep in touch. And probably about a year from now, you'll be hearing from me again, asking you to do a follow up.
Let's do it.